Before we start the episode, we will be speaking about some sensitive topics in this episode. So we will be addressing mental health and suicide as well as self-harm. So please do watch knowing this. I hope you enjoy the episode.
Hello and welcome back to Season 2, Episode 9 of the Debatable Discussions podcast. Today we are joined by a very special guest for what I hope is a very exciting episode as well.
So today we're joined by Stefano, who is a student and a mental health advocate, and we're talking about an issue that unfortunately isn't talked about enough, which is mental health in young people. And but before we start, I just want to say that our co-host John has began a blog on Medium. Do give him a follow. Is at John Gartside, if I'm not wrong, where he writes about history.
Yeah, thank you.
So beginning with the episode now, Stefano, it's great to have you here.
No, thank you very much for having me. Firstly, I read John's blog last night. It's very informative. I do recommend it. So as Dan mentioned, my name is Stefano Durico. I'm a youth mental health campaigner and have been for going on about three and a half years now, working with a few different organizations, both local, national, and as well as some companies as well, supporting parents, students themselves. I'm 18 years old, so about to be 19, so going to university in the coming weeks.
Oh, so Steph, you just mentioned your role in helping people's mental health effectively. So can you explain to our listeners what mental health is and why is it important?
So there's a distinction which should be made from the offset, which is everyone has mental health, and then there's ill mental health, which is everyone has ups and downs with their mental health. And when it's down for quite a bit of time, as I like to say, that's when it can start really affecting you. And that's when you should seek professional help. In the UK, that'll be via the form of going to your GP. Well, firstly, speaking to your friend, your parents' trusted adult, whoever that may be, and then taking the initiative to go to reach support for from your GP. And that is when it's really gotten to the point where it's affecting your life and it's affecting you in a negative way, and whatever path that sort of takes, at that point you should be seeking support. And it's important for you because at the end of the day, that's if you're not happy with the one person you're going to be spending the rest of your life with, which is yourself, then you're not going to have a great time. So it's important to sort of look after yourself in that sort of regard.
And also, I wanted to ask, how can every individual, so how can John take care of our mental health in a sort of, day-by-day basis to, in a way, prevent it from getting worse?
Preventative approach. Now I'm taking the lines from some of the charities I work with, but a preventative approach is always the best approach. No, so for that sort of question, I'd almost always go for just talk, like just speak amongst yourselves, have a good community around you, get outside as much as possible. As much as we will joke about it that going for a walk won't help when you're at crisis point, but well before crisis point, like if we're talking about prevention, that's fantastic. Like for the everyday person who's just trying to protect their mental health, they should be practicing daily walks, getting out into nature, doing some sport, but also taking that time for yourself. So whether that takes the form of mindfulness, so meditations, potentially mindful eating, so just really taking a second, maybe whilst you're in the shopping queue at the supermarket, instead of going on your phone, just taking a second, looking around you and realizing, okay, I'm here, ground yourself in a moment, feel yourself in your body, and then you've just reset yourself almost, which is there's a lot about mindfulness, which I think you could probably record a whole season on it in itself. But I really do recommend if you're starting to realize that not everything's going your way, or you want to learn more about yourself, I really do recommend reading or learning a bit more about mindfulness in itself, because I think that's a fantastic way to sort of go about it.
So Steph, as a mental health campaigner, I'm sure you've seen sort of awareness around mental health has risen quite a lot over the past few years. So would you say that perhaps we've become too aware of our mental health? And I only ask this because nowadays you've got lots of people sort of self-diagnosing themselves with ADHD. You've got people believing they have ADHD but they actually don't, and you've got it similarly with other neurodivergent conditions. So do you think perhaps we've sort of become almost too aware? I don't know how to phrase that correctly.
No, it's definitely something which we talk about a lot in the space. There's been a great shift towards destigmatization of mental health, which, let's be honest, I might be wrong with the years, but 30 plus years ago, it was a crime to end one's own life.
Wow.
That was criminal. That's why we have the phrase, which there's a big campaign against not using the phrase committed suicide, instead use died by suicide, because just for peace of mind in the families of the people who have taken their own life, like, it used to be criminalized. Like, this stuff was so taboo that it was at that point. So we've reached fantastic heights in the fact that the destigmatization process is really getting there. Like, I speak amongst fellow campaigners now, and we say we're no longer really campaigning to the society about destigmatized mental health. Like, we do it a bit, don't get me wrong. Like, we do it in daily conversations and stuff like that, but our focus is now shifted to policy levels because that's where our attention is needed the most. But when it comes to the other part of the question of overdiagnoses, it's something which we're seeing quite often, and there's two ways to go about it, because if you think about at the moment, the current statistic is 1 in 4 young people will have a problem mental health condition. That is ill mental health condition, and yes, that is horrifying. Like, and those are, from what I understand on that data, it is like clinically diagnosed condition, or will likely be diagnosed with that condition at the current state. That's up from like 1 in 15. I think that was pre-COVID. 1 in 15, I might be mistaken. And that's shocking, if we're really honest. That case of overdiagnosing, it's something which we talk about a lot, because yes, we have more people because of the awareness, and with the rise of different social apps, we have people seeing videos and sort of relating to that. But we really need to think then and go, okay, hold on a second. Do I have ADHD just because I characterize myself with 1 or 2 of these things? If you characterize yourself with quite a few of those things, yes, go see your GP, go see a doctor. Make sure that if support is there, that's great, because there is, like, it, just because we have better, like, sort of awareness of it doesn't mean that that's a bad thing. It's just what step you take afterwards. If you realize, oh, I have anxiety because I've watched that video and it's all a lot for me. I'm going through a really stressful period in my life. Okay, you've got exams. Okay, that's a really stressful period. You might have like anxious thoughts, but you're not. For example, the low mood one's probably the best one to. The low mood one's probably the best example to give. If you're experiencing a time of low mood, you're not depressed.
Yeah.
Per se, you might have like depressive thoughts, and if it goes on for a prolonged period of time, you should be seeking professional support. Like, that's just what should be happening, and more importantly, the support should be there for you to access, which at the moment is the biggest struggle. But if you're just experiencing sort of low mood and that sort of things, like, then you should just monitor it. You should reach out to your friends. You should be talking about it. You should really be talking about it. Like, you should be doing all those things I said at the start of the episode of protecting your mental health. You should be sort of setting boundaries. If you're depressed because, I'm talking about old generations, because your boss keeps on calling you in the middle of the night asking for that pitch deck to come through, then you should be setting up boundaries. Perhaps you should be having that conversation with HR. That's the sort of things which you need to think about, and you need to start protecting it. If it goes on for like a few weeks, a few months, then that's the point where you should be seeking professional help. And beforehand, it's more like a tracking, being awareness of it. I think that within ourselves, like, the awareness of that is the most important part. So it's the same thing as the phone conversation, which I'm sure everyone has heard of. But if I know that I'm spending 3 hours a day on TikTok, I have a self-awareness of that. And if I consciously make that decision to spend 3 hours a day on TikTok, it might not be the best, but I've consciously made that. But if I'm just plodding along with life, then that's probably not very helpful for me. And it's the same with, not same, but similar with mental health conditions, that you might have that self-awareness, but if you don't, then you have to be a bit more conscious of what's going on.
I always think, and I always say this to people, that this, as soon as you have a problem, mental or physical problem, go see a doctor.
Yeah.
Over the internet, everyone has the same. Me, a baby, and a 50-year-old doctor have the same amount of information over the internet.
Yeah.
Go see a doctor. They train for loads of years. It's hard to get in. They know what they're doing. Go see a professional.
No, I completely agree. And it's one of those things that to be honest, if you've reached that point of self-awareness, then that's probably the point to go. It's the time. It's the point where if you've reached the point where you realize, oh God, like this really isn't right for me. Like that's when it's reaching that self-awareness point, which is the hardest part.
And you're not going to get judged. A lot of people, I think, are very scared of, I'm going to go, what are they going to think about me? They see loads of patients every day. They're probably not going to remember you, frankly. If they do remember you, everyone goes through the same period sometimes in their life. You know, I'm sure that a 50-year-old person has had those kind of problems, and they won't judge you. Go see a professional. But I want to go to what we can do. So me and John, for example, we're not professionals. How can we support others? How can we support our friends? How can we support our families? In case someone's having a tough time.
It's just on that, on your last point, that yes, if you reach that point where you realize, hold on a second, I need to access support, that's when you really should be going. Because yes, you should have that conversation with your family members, you should have that conversation with your friends and your peers, which interestingly enough, a young person is very much more likely to go to their peers before their parents or a trusted adult, which is why I keep on telling every single parent I work with, no matter how much you have a fantastic relationship with your child, like, and that's really rare, ballpark figure, 80% of the children will go to their friendship group for support. So at that point, if I'm saying you, Dan, what can you do if John comes to you saying, look, I've realized I've been anxious for quite some time. I've been experiencing low mood. I don't think John will probably say I've been experiencing symptoms of low mood, but if that's what sort of feeling you're getting off the conversation, first thing is to probably provide a mental health first aid is like an acronym for ALGI. So first one I believe is action. So I don't think it's action actually, but it's the steps effectively are what's going on in the immediate. Are they in crisis? Is there any harm to yourself or the person in question or others around you? If there's risk of harm, emergency services immediately. You listen, and you listen actively. So you maybe respond to what they say. Always ask open questions. Is it really important? So ask them, do you know perhaps why you're feeling like this? Or maybe why is not always the best. But if you could make sure that they don't just answer yes or no, is normally the best thing. But that's not always possible. Just, again, if they're in crisis, always stay with them until professional help arrives. But if it's just a brief conversation, always, by the end of it, you should always be reaching a point of, I think you should reach professional support. So recommend them to their GP, recommend that they go to their GP. If you have the relationship with someone, you can recommend that you go with them. So I've done it in the past, I've not gone, but I've offered saying, look, if you're struggling, you don't know maybe how you might feel in the GP office, then you go, okay, like I'm happy to come with you to go there.
Yeah. So, Steph, how also do you think the government should be helping people's mental health? How are they helping people's mental health at the moment? What should they be doing? And the reason we're asking this is because, particularly in my view, I'm sort of wondering that have charities, apps, and all these other organisations advocating for mental health, do you think to an extent that they have replaced the need for the government to offer immediate help surrounding mental health? Yes.
Yeah. So at the moment, the situation is dire, for lack of better words. So I'll give you an example. I was speaking to a child and adolescent psychiatrist in Durham area a couple of weeks ago, and he was telling me that he had a patient presenting with depression. 14-year-old girl comes into his clinic. Okay, this is via the NHS. He goes in and he realizes, hold on a second, this girl isn't necessarily depressed. She's got ADHD. For her to get that ADHD support via like the correct means at in his area, 4 years.
Wow.
This is a 14-year-old girl, and for him to he would then push for her to get that diagnosis and to reach that support. But she'll be 18 by that point. She would have completed her GCSEs and completed her A levels probably. If she manages to stay in school for that long, because school-based avoidance is one of the biggest things at the moment. So, just thinking about that, like that's the current situation nationwide. Health is a devolved issue in the UK, so it's for each nation to sort of have their own policies. I campaign obviously more in England, but the destigmatization things which we were talking at the start, that's worldwide effectively. But the thing that we're working on at the moment is preventative initiatives. So there's mental health support teams in schools, which this is an NHS England run operation effectively, but they're not even at 50% promised rate. That was under the Tory government, but it should improve with the Labour government, but they've now focused more on crime prevention, so a lot less on mental health initiatives, which is confusing because of how interlinked crime and mental health is, because if we focus on a preventative approach instead, then we won't actually have that many issues per se as high rate. Other preventive approaches, we've called for a full nationwide rollout of mental health support hubs, early mental health support hubs, to be in every postcode. That's funding has been promised. It's tough. Like it's tough out there. I'll be really honest. Like I'm chairing an organization at the moment which is trying to launch one in Kent, and like it's difficult. We're trying to get pots of funding now, and it's we're moving forward. I'll be honest, but it's we don't know if we'll manage to wait for the government. Like the suicide rates at which came out last week are the highest since 1999, if I'm not mistaken, for 2023.
Okay.
Like that's the current state which we're at, and apart from the side that for every suicide there's a huge ripple effect on families, a huge economic impact for life lost. Like poor mental health equates for huge amounts of money in our economy. I wish I don't have the statistics on me at the moment, but if you search them up, they are massive. But that's a life lost. Like at the end of the day, that is a human life lost.
Wow. Yeah.
And we haven't improved on that in a very long time. We have male suicides as being one of the leading cause of death in young people, in young males below the age of 45, I believe. Like this is the current rate of things that we're at, and I can guarantee you that if cancer was killing people that quickly, there will be preventative approaches in place. There are preventative approaches in place. We're looking at smoking bans for outdoor pubs. We're looking at we've got bans for other things we've got tax duties for tobacco, for drinking. Where's the taxing for social media companies? Where's the preventative approach in schools? Where's the whole school approach exists? Is it being laid out? Is it being pushed out? Mental health support teams are effective. Like I was part of a research group with Young Minds, which was commissioned by Northwest London boroughs, and I was at the end stage and the reporting stage of the sort of commissioning, and we found that they are working. There are tweaks to be made, but Northwest London are doing them. But that's Northwest London. Like that's in one area. we still need still need a full rollout nationwide. Otherwise, there are people falling through the systems. Like, there are people falling through the cracks, and there are no safety nets in place at the moment. And that's why we keep on going to crisis. We've just opened up a new crisis line by the NHS. Fantastic. Brilliant that we've opened this up. But it's a crisis line, it's not a prevention.
Steph, quickly, you were talking about, obviously, the dire state the NHS is in for mental health. However, would you say this isn't exactly exclusive to mental health? Because overall, the NHS isn't an absolutely awful state, and surely it's also physical health as well as mental health, which is experiencing, these awful effects. But also, would you say though that secondly, nowadays, would you also say that from the non-clinical perspective, awareness and treatment around mental health has risen? I only say this because there's so many organisations and apps nowadays that are advocating and helping young people's mental health.
So, yes, there is the mental health. The NHS is struggling is fantastic, but it's struggling at the moment. I don't think that there's anyone who would say otherwise at the moment. Like, they've just about managed to prevent them from striking. Great. But we need to look at the future. So where are we going? What's Keir Starmer's plan with the NHS? Is it really clear? That's for you to answer. You two could probably give me a better answer than I could, but I don't think so. He's spoken limited amounts about using technology and AI. It's just very limited at the moment, and I really do hope we see something soon. Because it needs a transformation. It's lasted 75 years. It came together after the war. It's been fantastic. But at the moment, there are still protocols which are out of date. Worker satisfaction is very low. I mean, most of our doctors are fleeing to Australia. Well, not fleeing, but at this point, almost. Like, they're going to Australia and New Zealand to work because they get paid better. They work better hours. And to be honest, they can still do the job they love without the stresses. And there is a genuine, like, I speak to some of the doctors there. There's a genuine love for the NHS, which is fantastic, but we need to protect it and safeguard it. So yes, it is crumbling per se at all levels, but the way we've seen mental health awards and everything has been so much worse. Like, I take the campaign, for example, by Mind, I believe it was, about mental health hospitals. I believe that campaign was last year or 2 years ago. And just the stuff which comes out of them is disgusting, because it's still from that stigmatized time. Like, it's still from that time which we were talking about earlier, that the stigma was so bad. Now it's improved. We've recognized that. And okay, it's not improved as much as we hope, but in 10, 15 years' time, I predict that there won't be as much of a stigma as there is now. I think it will be completely normal conversations being had about it. Families will be talking at it over the dinner table, which they are now. They are now. But it will be in the other communities as well. The communities who are a bit more stigmatized at the moment. I was speaking to someone in Northern Ireland yesterday, and he was saying, okay, the stigma here is still very much prevalent. But he's even recognizing in Northern Ireland, which is typically an area which is quite stigmatized for these sorts of topics, it's getting better. So we are seeing that come down a bit. And in the second part of your question, the increased awareness and whether or not that's helping through self-medicating almost in safe ways, like through mindfulness apps or whatever it might be, through charities. I think that there's a fact to say that, yes, they are helping. Like, that's just straight away. Like, if you feel that, whether it be religious, cultural, family reasons, that you don't want to go to a GP to access support, but you can open an app on your phone and that gives you a diagnosis, preliminary diagnosis for that matter. It gives you ways to access support anonymously. That's quite a big thing. We didn't have that 10, 15 years ago. We didn't have phones 25 years ago. So that's sort of the levels which we're talking about. Like, that's really important, because if you have that, then people can feel safe in their own environments. People can act as that support without them. So just some mindfulness apps out there, Headspace, Calm, whatever it may be. Just even following certain Instagram accounts really like resets you whilst you're doom scrolling, which I think we're all susceptible to doing. But no, it's that sort of thing where they are really helpful. And I also just wanted to touch on the fact that we have a complete and utter reliance on the third sector in the UK. So that's charities and other organizations, which goes back to that point about the NHS, that if we had a functioning system, we would not be relying on mental health support hubs run by charities. We would not be relying on schools having to take their own initiatives or whatever it may be. We don't have to be relying on Joe's Buddy Line going into schools and local areas to make sure that there's support in place. And yes, the NHS is improving that sort of system, but we should not be relying on these organizations to be taking up the brunt of it. Yes, we should be encouraging entrepreneurial ideas and health tech opportunities. So, for example, there's the NHS entrepreneurship program, which it's not as well known, but at the moment, for example, one of the organizations I work with, one of the founder is a doctor in the NHS, an A&E doctor, and he then goes on to, he still works on the wards, he still works on his shifts, and he's part of a program with the NHS, and they support him to a degree for his own startup, which at the end of the day is fantastic because it's safe. It's the future of the NHS effectively, which is exactly what we need. And it keeps doctors who would typically leave the service to work on their startup inside it, because I don't know the logistics of it, but it supports them in a specific way, which seems to be helpful. So that's sort of some of the stuff which they're doing really well. And I'd like to see more initiatives across physical and mental health within the NHS.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think you said it right there. The NHS is a service because there's very few places in the world where you can go into a hospital and really receive top quality healthcare like in the UK. And I think the NHS has lasted very well, but it is like a sick patient now. It requires surgery. And the surgeon now is Keir Starmer and the Labour government. So they need to get their act together, I think, and come up with a initiative that is well planned and explicit. Unlike, I mean, Keir Starmer himself has said that he won't go to a private doctor ever. He'd use the NHS. So I hope that in the same spirit, he will begin to fund it properly and really help the doctors there who are working tirelessly for the population. I think also, moving on to the last question, everything was exacerbated by COVID. Mental health, physical health, everything got shut down for a bit, really. You couldn't get into a hospital unless you had a really, really, really bad issue. So, Stefano, apart from COVID and, all the social anxiety or the alienation that has happened with it, what else do you think is causing more and more people to have problems with their mental health?
I'll get on to the what else part in a second, but I do want to touch on the importance of COVID because it's something which we're seeing now a bit more. And like the thing which I always think about now is that I'm just using ballpark figures here. 80% of the population protected 20%.
Yeah.
Just during COVID, okay?
Yeah.
Did we know the risks? We had some idea of them, let's be honest.
Yeah.
We knew the risk of shutting people into their houses. Yes, in the UK, our lockdown was not like other countries in Europe. Like our lockdown was weak in terms of which thank God, because otherwise we'd be looking at a very different state of mental health and physical health. But you prevented people from going outside. You prevented people from having control of their own lives. When people don't have control of their own lives, what do they then progress on to? Want to control other actions. This led to a huge rise in, now when I say huge, I mean I see it when I talk to my friends. I see it when I'm sure you guys know it as well. You see a rise in self-harm behaviors, eating disorder behaviors, or disordered eating patterns, and if you tell these are control-based disorders because people lacked so much control at the time, and now sort of that was lost on them, and they turned to sort of quote unquote self-medicating. It was the only thing which they could have for themselves. So we shouldn't forget the impact of COVID or the way that these sort of like social anxieties then progressed on, especially for like young like infants and toddlers, because like we're still yet to actually see how that will end up being for them. But on your second point, what are some of the other big causes for ill mental health in the UK? It's just to name a few: cost of living crisis, climate emergency, climate anxiety is a huge thing. Housing's quite poor at the moment. If we're talking about slightly older young people, so around the age of 25, they might be thinking about, okay, I want to get on the housing ladder. How can I do this? Oh, wait, got an issue there. All these things are like small things, which you think of the bucket analogy, and like there's only so much you can hold in yourself, but that just like completely fills in. There's a complete lack of hope. Like that's the thing which we lack at the moment, where there is hope for a better day, but people don't see that. Like people know that there's people know about what's going on in the world. We think about the riots which you saw last month, sorry, basically race riots. Okay, they came about because they were everything else which was going on in society. It wasn't just an immigration issue. It was, okay, there's people who can't get jobs, people who have been poorly educated, people who 3 years ago were locked in their homes, and they still haven't felt like they got their share back. There's so many other factors. There's crumbling public health services or public services in general, and people that causes turmoil. Whether that takes the form of race riots or whatever else it takes the form of, it's still stuff which gets internalized by people. People are then scared of these events going on in the world. They look outside their window and there's mass riots going on in their capitals. That concerns people. People forget that there's better hope for that there is hope for the future. I love the campaign by Baton of Hope. They did a tour in 2023, and they're going back on tour in 2025. This time doing all 4 nations, and they really they focus on suicide prevention, but they really try and spread the message that whatever sort of difficulty people are going through, things do get better, and things will get better. But it's just about making sure that, from my role as a campaigner, it's about making sure that we hold the decision makers to account. If a decision maker, I've spoken to former ministers about mental health policy, and I've told them, look, this isn't working. Like, I've been in those conversations, and we will continue to have those. Like, I speak to many campaigners quite regularly about this, and we're passionate because we do it for the other people who aren't in the room. Like, we have motivations which people can't even imagine, and we will hold these people to account, and there is hope at the end of the day for things to improve. We just need to find it.
I love what you said there.
Just to quickly finish off with Steph, though, for those reasons you gave for poor mental health, they are sort of reasons that I'd imagined affect people in every single country in the world. However, before the recording, I did look where the UK ranks for mental health in the world, and it said that we are the second worst country in the world. So why do you think? Why do you think that we are especially bad? Because people across the world will have climate anxiety. There's, lots of countries are affected by cost of living, but what makes us really bad effectively in this compared to lots of other countries?
So I was annoyingly, last week there was many statistics which came out about, there was there was front page news pretty much every day about mental health, and there was the one week where I go on holiday, so I'm still catching up on some of the things, but we were, I think, the worst in terms of happiness in Europe, I think, which The Guardian took with it and flew with it, from what I've heard, and I'm still yet to read the article. But why? It's still unclear. It's a plethora of reasons. It's the amount that we use social media. We could even go all the way down to our vaping epidemic that we've got here. Like, we can literally talk about anything. We could talk about our sense of humor. In the UK, we're generally quite dark, down, and it can be quite negative if we're constantly spiraling and constantly talking about, oh yeah, this isn't. I'm not happy about this. I'm not happy about that. If you're joking about it, at one point it turns into something which isn't a joke. So you sort of need to keep that in mind when we talk about how our mental health is worse than others. Then you look at the approaches that we have. I mean, we have a very good. The stigma in the UK is not very high at the moment compared to other countries, compared to our past. Compared to our past, it's an all-time best. But if you look at places in Asia, if you look at the US, even the US is pretty much on par with us in terms of stigma, I believe. But in Europe, I mean, stigma still exists quite a lot. So I'd even question the data almost as to whether or not people felt comfortable in saying that they weren't happy and stuff like that. Like, there is a question about that as well. It could go down to smartphone use as well. We have a very heavy reliance on it, and it is reliance now. I was about to say usage, but it's reliance. It could be a plethora of reasons. I mean, again, we've had 20 years of political issues, realistically, like political instability over the past 5 years. If you look at how many prime ministers we've had over the past 5 years, I mean, that's probably a place to start, isn't it? Like, we don't have stability. Yeah, it's stuff like that which you sort of have to think about and go, okay, is that stuff really making people upset, or is it causing mental ill health? That's where the distinction lies. Back to, I think, was the second question you asked originally. Yeah. Like, is that a question of mental ill health, or is it upset? And again, if people realize, oh, hold up, this is really upsetting me quite a few times, then, as Diane mentioned earlier, seek professional help, because that's the best way to really realize what are my options, how can I move forwards, that sort of stuff.
Thank you, Steph. I love what you said, that people today lack. I mean, I didn't love it that people lack hope, but I love the phrasing of it. I mean, I was looking this morning, I woke up and I checked my Financial Times Digest, and I saw, tens of thousands protesting in Tel Aviv, calling for a ceasefire. I mean, you look around at the world, you've got Putin invading Ukraine, you've got all the trouble with Hamas.
Ukraine going back and invading Russia now. Yeah, they're doing good. They're fighting back. They're fighting back well.
I mean, you've got all those conflicts everywhere, some more mediatized than others. And I think we just, at the moment, don't see how it can get better. Everyone just thinks the world's going to end tomorrow. And it's not. It's not going to end tomorrow.
No, I don't see any asteroids coming down from us. Now, I'm not a space person at all, but the world's doing... Okay, we need to sort out some stuff, and we need to get our ducks in a row, I think that's the phrase, isn't it? But we're moving forward, and we're moving forward positively.
I agree. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast today. And I also want to say one last time, do read John's blog on Medium. It is great. And if you did like the episode, please do give us a 5-star review and a follow and drop a comment.
Yes, thank you to Steph. And also, everyone should definitely check out Stefano on Instagram, LinkedIn. He's done some amazing work. I think he's even been to 10 Downing Street for mental health. So do check out Steph and all the organisations that he works with.
Thank you very much. That's very kind of you. It's been a pleasure to have this discussion.